Hey guys, well, before I start talking about the subject of this video, if you guys enjoy me talking about films just in general and you'd like to help me get a bit more exposure and you have a smartphone, read the description after the video is over. It gives you all the instructions on how you can help me out a little bit there. Okay, so let's talk about Netflix. Yeah, I really don't know how I ever survived without Netflix. Just such a sort of convenient kind of service for still not a huge amounts of money every month. Very sort of bearable kind of fee. I imagine that's going to go up as time goes on, and not just because of inflation. Yeah, it's just the basic convenience of it to just click and it's there. You don't even need to sort of jump through a bunch of hoops of, doing a lot of searches. It's really just the film title or the title of the show, and there it is. Just click, and not even a huge amount of loading time a lot of the time. I tend to use it mostly to just watch shows, films. I tend to find there aren't that many that I'm really that interested in. There's a lot of crap on Netflix, obviously, and in terms of films, there just isn't the same kind of library. There's a lot of decent shows on there, and I think also it's because when I'm watching a film, I think I'm looking for a very specific film that I want to watch. Whereas shows, I'm more just kind of like, well, what's my kind of show? I don't have this ambition to watch like every show out there or anything. I'm just looking for shows that happen to be on that might interest me. But also, Netflix has the most incredible library of like top-notch shows. So many of them. They probably have the best library of shows in terms of just their original series that are on there. Never mind the stuff from other networks that is on there. Yeah, I think the only network that can really compete with them in terms of the standards of the shows that I distribute is probably HBO. So yeah, I'm just going to take you through some Netflix series, just some of my basic thoughts on them. So here we go. I'm going to do this in alphabetical order. So, this isn't like any kind of ranking or anything. Modern day Twilight Zone is basically just the way you have to summarise this. Certainly not the kind of thing that you really think of when you think of a Netflix series, with it being a new story each episode. But definitely some sort of common themes about, cautionary tales, bittersweet endings, and also fictional technology. The episodes I feel that actually aren't as good and, seem like the less popular ones are the ones that don't give definitive answers to everything. And also the more contemporary episodes, I think people don't like that about them. A lot of people recommend that you skip over the first episode just because it's such a bizarre concept, and it's not actually a very sort of typical Black Mirror episode, really, when you compare it to the later episodes in the series. And then the second episode is much more like the kind of episode that you would typically expect from this show. It's called 15 Million Merits. I kind of have a few issues actually with that episode. I find the message of that episode a little bit preachy, to be honest. But the world it creates in that episode, that's amazing. That's the other great thing about this show. It's just the worlds they create in every single episode. The sort of concepts that are quickly introduced and then they write a story around them. Really interesting. There's a couple of episodes out there where the story isn't really about the fictional technology they introduce. It's more just a plot device, to push the story in a certain direction, and that seems all a bit too sort of convenient. It's, we need this to happen, well, let's just invent a bit of fictional technology to get that to happen. That seems a little bit lazy to me. The most recent season, which was released in late December of last year, to me actually is probably the weakest season. Not to say it isn't still good, it was really good, but yeah, there were a couple of episodes I didn't really like, and there's one really good one. In fact, actually no, I tell a lie, there's about 3 really good ones. There's a couple that I was just kind of iffy about, and there's one I thought was just alright. Seasons before that, actually, I feel are really solid. So yeah, it's not a perfect show. There are 2 or 3 episodes that I'm not too keen on, but yeah, a really interesting and probably quite a good show to just watch one episode at night as well, actually, because it's not serial-based at all. There's a new story each week. If you like the Twilight Zone, you will absolutely love this, definitely. Already talked about the show on this channel, but I really wanted to talk about it again. Just such a great social commentary. I don't think I've ever seen social commentary as good as this in anything ever. I think that is kind of the irony with the fact that everyone is a type of animal in this. It's visually speaking, it doesn't look like it's going to be a lot about real life or give you any kind of message about the real world at all. Because everyone's a type of animal. It just looks bizarre. It just looks random. It's like, makes you think it's some kind of adult version of Adventure Time or something. But no, it is honestly just about the real world and what life is really like. I don't think they're going to do another season. It did seem like they were trying to sort of wrap things up with a kind of happy ending at the end of the most recent season. That's the other thing I should say about it. Really depressing kind of show all round. A couple of really good messages about how, just simply saying you're sorry sometimes isn't enough, and about just simply acknowledging that you made your life a mess and that, you're not a good person or anything. that's not good enough. You need to actually do something about it. So yeah, a lot of really good messages in there. They're a bizarre sort of looking show, but once you get past that, yeah, really engaging. I haven't actually seen this, but my parents have, and they say it's really good. I think if you like the King's Speech, you'll probably like this. I would have thought it would make more sense to wait until after the Queen passed away before doing this. So you know, they could make it about like her entire reign, which maybe they'll do anyway. Maybe if she dies while the show's still on Netflix, maybe, which is now the question. She's pretty old now. Maybe they will do that. But yeah, I hear this is really good. I'm not quite sure what time frame it has covered so far, although I think they're up to about the 60s at the end of the most recent season or something. Yeah, I'll probably check this out at some point. It seems a very sort of girly kind of show, though, to me, so it's not something that's like at the top of my list at the moment. I probably don't really need to say much about this because so many people have talked about it already, but yeah, it is by far the best thing connected to the MCU that there has been so far. The Avengers, the first Avengers film is pretty close second for me, but this is definitely the best one. Such good characters. Some people don't like Karen. I'm okay with Karen. The villain sort of just sets the tone sort of perfectly, and then the villain in the second season kind of has his own sort of story. I was kind of sort of a little bit miffed by what they did with Elektra in the second season. I won't spoil it for anyone that's not seen it. The characters kind of sort of all go off and do their own things in the second season. The second season is definitely not as good. There's also a lot of sort of tying into certain other sort of random things, like this weird thing with a hole in the ground in the second season that never goes anywhere. It's another one that sort of suffers from that problem of, can't tell them what I'm really doing. It might put them in danger or something, and it never really makes sense to me why they would not just tell, their friends and family what they're doing and who they are. But yeah, just the tone and the atmosphere of this show is fantastic. Just a lot of really good characters. Yeah, just the title alone kind of sort of makes you think, I'm not sure about this. Yeah, the title definitely put me off for a while. And then just the first few minutes of this show sort of threw me off a little bit because I didn't realise it was going to be a sort of kind of black comedy sort of thing. I thought it was going to be more just raunchy, but no, it's actually more of a sort of life lesson for teenagers. There's a lot of sort of weird, bizarre sort of humour in it, and I'm not entirely sure what the point of any of it is, because it doesn't really have any kind of clear ending, and I don't think they're going to do another season. The two main characters in this are really engaging for a long period of time. It's basically just a sort of runaway story, but with a sort of weird sort of twist to it. I don't really want to say too much about it because I don't want to spoil it really, but it's a short series as well. It's 8 episodes and they're only 20 minutes, so it won't take up too much of your time. In fact, you can probably consume the whole thing in one day. I didn't, actually, for the record. But yeah, really kind of engaging. Not really sure what I'm supposed to take from it through the end because the ending kind of just stops. Aptly titled, I would say. This sort of feels like it's trying to be just, another teen drama with just kind of elements of American Pie and basic sort of every high school series that you've ever seen. I'm not entirely sure why they set it in the 90s either, unless maybe they're trying to do the whole Stranger Things thing of nostalgia, people will enjoy it because who remember being a kid in that time period will enjoy it or something. I only saw a couple of episodes and it was like, this is just a teen drama that just happens to be set in the 90s. Did not do it for me at all. Not seen the series, but I feel like I should just at least talk about it briefly because it was the very first Netflix series. Not really sort of massively into sort of office politics and, American drama and, to do with the government and everything. I understand the significance of it, how it set the ball rolling for Netflix and the whole idea of these Netflix series and these series that just cannot seem to get a network to say yes, and then Netflix will just come along and say, yeah, sure, because they don't have to worry about anything other than what date they're going to release it. They don't have to worry about ad breaks, they don't have to worry about the length of the episode, they don't even have to worry about how many episodes there are. So real significance to this series, even though I personally have not actually seen it, although I hear it's really good. This probably is the worst thing connected to the MCU. Iron Man 2, another thing that starts with iron, oddly enough, is probably a close second, but I think this is definitely the worst. He already has his powers by the time the series starts, and the series is more just about sort of proving his identity and then just what he does after he's done that. It's more sort of political. It's not really about him being the Iron Fist or anything. The characters are just sort of, they're this type of character and that's it sort of thing. We're not really given any kind of sort of developmental background to them. We're just sort of told that they're a specific type of character to serve a function almost. Doesn't really seem like they're given any kind of... It almost feels like we jump into the story like part way through. It felt like the start of a second season almost. It when the first episode started, I was like, is this the first episode? Have they had a previous season or something? It was like, it honestly felt like I'd missed something, and sometimes that can be engaging. I assumed we were going to be given like some kind of big flashback to what had happened before, and we do get a few flashbacks, but it's all just sort of information we could have guessed, really. And then weirdly enough, when he actually goes out there at the end of the series to try and really discover how he became the Iron Fist, that's actually kind of interesting. I'm like, oh, now we're getting interesting. And that's where the series ends. Or the season ends, anyway. I assume they're going to do another season. So I suppose I'm going to have to fucking watch the second season for the actual interesting stuff. I'm not sure I'm going to bother with the second season, but yeah. This did not do it for me. Not interesting characters at all. Another MCU series, and this is just a hair below Daredevil, I would say. This a great sort of detective drama, just with a superheroine, basically. David Tennant really absolutely steals the show in this as the puppet master. Again, a lot of really interesting kind of concepts. Again, this is really sort of much like Daredevil, driven by the characters, I feel, and the different twists and turns that the relationships of those characters take. Unlike Daredevil, this didn't really feel like it needed to be 13 episodes. I feel like the first season of Daredevil did need to be 13 episodes, but this really didn't. It does lull a little bit in the middle part, but there's definitely a couple of episodes towards the end that are definitely worth the price of admission just on their own. Some events during the series that sort of take the characters in sort of new directions, they feel a little bit too convenient. There are a few questions I have about Jessica Jones's strength ability, like, she should be better really at being able to defend herself than she is. There's certain characters I sort of grow to like, and then they sort of just disappear, and I'm like, I was kind of interested in who they were, and then they just sort of go. Yeah, it's kind of brutal with his characters. I think a lot of the MCU series, at least the ones that are on Netflix, are kind of like that. But yeah, just a hair below Daredevil, this one for me. And second season is coming later this week. This one hasn't been released yet at the time of recording this. I just wanted to mention it just because I'm psyched for this. Hated the film. It's got to be one of the worst films I've ever seen. But I definitely liked the idea of the film. I thought, if somebody could take the idea of that film and write a better story about it that's better structured and has better acting, certainly, and also just some more interesting kind of characters, that could really work. And I also remember thinking, it would probably work better as a series as well, because there's a lot of story to tell, and the problem the film had is there just wasn't enough time to do it. In fact, it never really even gets resolved in the film. Now they're doing a series of it, and that is a much better idea. The trailer definitely suggests it's going to be kind of a serious kind of tone like the film was, which I'm all in favour of as well. Never watched the series from the 60s, all looked a bit sort of cheesy and stupid to me. But yeah, I'm definitely in favour of a more serious look at Lost in Space. A friend of mine thought that this was, the old drama Lost, but set in space. Because of the title. I'm like, no. It's based on a 60s series called Lost in Space. This is one I feel like I should like a little bit more than I did. Again, it's like a lot of these Netflix series. It's another one that felt like it had too many episodes. It really, really lulls for long periods in the middle part of the season. Still a lot of really interesting characters and a lot of engaging sequences. I didn't really feel like it offered much more than just a few interesting ideas, though. It didn't have that same kind of real rich sort of feeling to the actual overall story to it. It just felt like it was just some interesting ideas and that was it. But people seem to really like it as much as Daredevil and Jessica Jones, so obviously it's just something that just didn't click for me. I've only seen one episode of this so far. Just basically what drew me into this was basically the first two episodes are directed by David Fincher, who also directed Seven. I'm like, oh wow, that's perfect. And you can definitely tell it's him from the first episode. Definitely feels like Seven. Also just an interesting idea, just to get a window into what this kind of profession is like. It's a guy who works in the FBI dealing with sort of psychopathic killers and trying to the sort of insight into their minds and how their minds work. Quite interesting. There's a few sort of by-the-numbers sort of Hollywood interference. I don't know about Hollywood interference, but that kind of things that make me feel, oh, that's the studio stepping in and saying, oh, we need to make it more cliched and more generic, to appeal to mainstream, which is something that you don't actually see that much from most of the Netflix shows, which is why, networks will say no to them, and why Netflix say yes. That's kind of the wonderful thing about the Netflix series. It strays away from all the cliches. I did see admittedly I've only seen one episode, but I did see a few of the cliches sort of stepping in just in that one episode. So hopefully that's not going to be an ongoing issue with it. Maybe that's just something in the first episode, but yeah, what I've seen so far, yeah, really enjoying it. Not quite finished this yet, but to anyone who's considering checking this out, I just want to give a word of warning. First episode really drags. really, it's not that good. The characters are not particularly engaging. Story just is sort of kind of interesting. It's a lot of just, what's that? What's going on here? What's that all about? What the heck's this? It just leaves you asking a lot of questions. But I guarantee if you just keep watching, at least until the start of the second episode, you will start getting a few more answers as to what was going on. But the first episode was really pissing me off for a long time. It's like, what the heck is going on here? But yeah, things start to make sense after that. You know, if you just keep watching, it definitely gets a lot more engaging after the first episode. And it's actually a really enjoyable kind of story. It's another one of those kidnapping situations where they have to make their escape. Few people have a problem with the fact that because it's told in flashback, like we already know that she gets out. So it's like, well, I think we probably knew that anyway, you know, because she's the main character. She's not exactly going to not escape, is she? But yeah, I've actually not quite finished it yet. There's a lot of bizarre concepts in it. I don't know if they ever really get explained as to what's going on. I assume they do, although I've not finished yet. But yeah, really interesting kind of story, and forward to seeing how things get resolved. This one obviously took its inspiration very much from Breaking Bad, specifically the money laundering subplot that goes on in that series, you know, where he buys the car wash. I actually sort of wanted to do a bit of research into money laundering after watching this. It's just so sort of fascinating to me as to how it all worked, you know, how you could expect to just sort of launder massive amounts of money by, buying these excessive, elaborate things, and nobody would sort of turn their heads and go, well, what's he doing that for? Why would he do that? Why would he just be spending all this kind of money? The bigger issue for me is this kind of has the sort of Marie problem from Breaking Bad, but to a much bigger degree. There's like 5 or 6 characters in this that the writers are obviously thinking, what are we going to get them to do in this episode? We need this character just serve this one small function here. And now they've got nothing to do. We need to give them something to do, basically. There's a lot of subplots going on throughout the series that are obviously just there to just give the characters something to do, and not many of them really work for me. There's a lot of them that I just don't find particularly interesting. I'm not sure if they were going for a bit of a dark comedy kind of approach to this. There's a few sort of moments that feel like, is that supposed to be a little bit of a joke, a little bit of sort of funny? It throws me off a little bit, because it's all very sort of serious for the most part, and there's just this sort of weird random joke in there somewhere that's like, I felt a bit out of place. Really interesting sort of main story that goes on in here, and absolutely love the main character. Jason Bateman's fantastic in this. Word of warning to anyone thinking about watching this: this is a German series, so you want to either watch it with English subtitles or with English dubbing, if you are English. I assume you are if you're watching this video. I would recommend you watch it with subtitles, basically, because the American dubbing, the voice acting for it at times is not great. And also, just watching a German series where all the characters have American accents is just weird. They're just, using American phrases the whole time. It's obviously set in Germany, and they're talking American accents, saying American-type things. It just doesn't fit. Another word of warning: very convoluted. It deals with multiple time periods, and it deals with a ton of different characters at different points in their life. Obviously played by different actors when they're different ages, and it's a little bit difficult to keep track of who is who and how they're related to other people. Complicated time travel logic to it, but once you get your head around all of that, it does take a bit of time. A really interesting story on here. A lot of just sort of interesting kind of concepts. Also edited kind of interestingly with cutting between different time periods the whole time. I would like a better sort of visual indication maybe of what time period we were in at times, because sometimes I will sort of think to myself, oh, hold on, who's that? Oh no, hang on, we're in the 80s now. Whereas before we were in the 2010s. I'm not quite sure it's why the home time period, if you like, is slightly in the future. It's actually set in 2019. That's unless maybe they're planning to end the series in 2019 or something. They are quite clearly planning a second season. But yeah, really interesting kind of story. A lot of kind of bizarre sort of concepts, but a lot of concepts that still kept me guessing, kind of interested. It seems weird to be saying this about a show that only had 10 episodes, but I also felt like that lulled a bit in the middle part. Actually, the first sort of third it lulls, and then it gets going again just before the halfway point, I would say. Yeah, I'm not sure it needed to be 10 episodes, really. It seems weird, only 10 episodes, and yet it still felt like it dragged. Really good series. I thought I would just recommend you watch it with subtitles. I honestly didn't expect much from this series, because I felt like we'd seen everything that the Punisher could do in Daredevil Season 2. But yeah, I just did not realise how much more of a story there was for him. The first episode sort of felt like, just a little sort of spin-off kind of episode, just to sort of show what he does in his day-to-day life and something, and I was like, guys, if this is all this series is, I might, have not bother with the rest of this, actually, but things get much more interesting. You actually get into the proper, storyline of the season in the second episode. It's also just kind of an interesting sort of concept of the story that, again, we don't really sort of get into until, the second episode, but the sort of things he has to deal with and this guy he helps out is it's really interesting. The different sort of twists and turns it takes with certain characters. A little bit convoluted with some of the flashbacks at times, got a little bit confusing. Again, like a lot of the Netflix series, lulls maybe a little bit towards the end, but the last couple of episodes really interesting, really engaging, and for a show called The Punisher with so much violence, I was expecting a bit more of a bittersweet ending, but it kind of threw me off actually a little bit, the ending. It maybe tied things up a bit too neatly. I assume they're not going to do a second season, although who knows. They probably weren't even planning to do this, but, The Punisher was just so popular after the second season of Daredevil, I guess they just decided, let's give him his own show. I'm really not sure what to think about this. I mean, this is, again, another series that probably wouldn't have ever happened were it not for Netflix, and the idea that they can just release all the episodes at once. But yeah, from what I've heard, it's not adapting the books particularly faithfully in a lot of places, and it comes across a little bit weird. Neil Patrick Harris's performance as Count Olaf, it throws me off a little bit. He comes across as a bit too much of a sort of comic relief Barney from How I Met Your Mother type character, and not really enough of a sort of bad guy. I also sort of thought from the first story that it was going to be more of a kind of serious sort of action adventure kind of thing, and then once he starts getting into those disguises in the second story, I'm like, oh, obviously this is supposed to have a little bit of comedy to it, and the tone doesn't kind of match for me. It doesn't quite work. Visually speaking, it's outstanding, though. It's really good. Also, the two kids, the Baudelaires, it's just so depressing for them. They obviously it says it quite clearly, not only in the title of the show, but also in the intro and from some of the narration. This is a very depressing kind of show. The Baudelaires, they get no lucky breaks at all. They get nothing but bad things happening to them. And I'm like, well, Don Bluth said that kids can take anything as long as you attach a happy ending. It doesn't even really seem to me like there's a happy ending a lot of the time. It's just that their misery just sort of continues from one story to the next. Certainly the end of the season was not a happy ending at all. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed parts of this. Probably will watch the second season, which is released on the 30th of this month. Just because Neil Patrick Harris's performance is really kind of engaging. Also, there's a lot of sort of bizarre sort of concepts to it, which I just find kind of entertaining. It is just sort of interesting to sort of watch and interesting to look at because it is great visually. I'm not sure if I would call it a good series though. I just don't think the story is particularly good. This, for me personally, is the most I've enjoyed any Star Trek show. Objectively, it's probably not as good as the original series or TNG, but for me personally, this is my favourite series. This is just much more the type of show that I really enjoy. Just an ongoing storyline, sort of more action-adventure, war kind of thing. Obviously with it being serial based. Threw me off a little bit when I first started watching it. It's like, it's Star Trek, you assume it's going to be episodic, a new story each week, and the fact that it wasn't just sort of, what's going on here? Certainly the first couple of episodes, it's kind of all over the map with stuff coming and going. Then things get a bit more settled down in the third one. So if you haven't seen this series yet, I would recommend you watch the first 3 episodes all in one go. Because the third one definitely gives you a better idea of the type of series this is going to be. And from there, the story just takes so many different twists and turns, and it's so interesting. The characters, with the possible exception of Tilly, they're all really good. Really enjoy watching all of them. There's a few sort of hardcore Trekkies that have criticised it for the fact that it just borrows a lot of concepts from previous various incantations of the show, especially that sort of alternate universe kind of thing that they go into later on in the series. To me, it's not necessarily about if it's been done before, or even has it been done better, or has it been done too much. It's about how well this show does it, because this show needs to be its own thing. It needs to stand out and do its own kind of thing. Some people sort of criticise the fact that it's not Star Trek, and I can kind of see that because I have watched a decent amount of the original series and TNG. And really, you only need to watch about 10 minutes of this show and you can tell right away that this is just not Star Trek at all. But to me, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think, we've had, 13 movies and 6 different shows before this. And Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek, has been dead for over 20 years. Isn't it about time they took things in a different direction? It shouldn't be about if it's different or if it's too similar, or if it's Star Trek or if it's not. It should be about just, is it a good show just on its own? And to me, it absolutely is. Cannot wait for the second season. Probably don't need to say much about this because so many people have talked about it already, but yeah, just a fantastic series overall. Second season, not quite as good as the first one, but still really good. I was kind of worried in the second season, especially when I saw those bits with them as the Ghostbusters, if it was going to get a bit too bogged down in, look, see that thing from the 80s there? I don't know if walkie-talkies were used quite that excessively and were quite as reliable as they are portrayed as being in this series, which they're obviously the substitute for phones. A lot of really interesting characters. Drags a little bit in the early parts of the second season. In fact, I don't even really think the second season really properly gets going until about the 5th episode, but my god is it worth it once you get to that point. The characters of... some of the characters are a little bit sort of pushed to the side, especially in the second season. Mike in particular didn't seem like he had much to do in the second season. Do not like the character of Max that was added in the second season, but the characters that I do enjoy, Dustin, Eleven, Joyce, Jim, they're just so good. I almost don't even care about the story sometimes. They're just such good characters. The effects are phenomenal. Just visually speaking, it's incredible to watch. Eleven might be one of the best sci-fi characters, in TV history, I think. The way that she evolves as a character over the course of the 2 seasons, it's absolutely incredible, the kind of arc she takes. She almost takes a sort of Anakin Skywalker arc in the second season. She doesn't go quite the whole way with it, but it's sort of like that a little bit. If I had any kind of slight nitpicks with it, I feel like at times there are too many characters and there's too much stuff going on, which is weird to say this about a show, given that the first season only has 8 episodes and the second season only has 9. And even with only 9 episodes, it felt like there was a lot of filler in that second season. So you wouldn't have thought there would be too much. You wouldn't have thought it would suffer from a problem of there being too many characters, but actually it does suffer from that problem just a little bit, but only very little. I think of all the Netflix series that I have seen, this one is probably my absolute favourite. This is kind of what Everything Sucks probably should have been. It should have been more of a sort of darker kind of... and this is definitely the type of series which really can only exist on Netflix because it's too long for a film. I don't think you could format this as like a weekly show, really. I think there's too much stuff constantly going on and too many sort of loose ends that need like tying up immediately for you to be able to just watch one episode of this a week. I don't think any network would have been interested in doing this. This could only have worked on Netflix. As much as I sort of appreciate that scar on his forehead they give when they're showing things in present time, and obviously that scar is missing during the flashbacks. It's a rather cheap looking effect. I think the makeup department was slacking a little bit, especially in some of the later episodes. It's really kind of interesting the sort of different kind of turns that character takes. It's actually kind of more interesting what he goes through in the flashbacks, I think. He's not actually that interesting, I think, in the sort of present day sort of parts of it. It didn't actually occur to me that there was going to be any kind of romance between him and Hannah. And I was kind of surprised by that. It didn't feel like there was much chemistry between them. That's the problem for me, is that the interactions between the characters, it doesn't feel natural to me that much. Definitely lulls a lot during the middle part of this series, I would say. I know obviously they were kind of tied down by the title of the series, but I really don't feel this needs to be 13 episodes at all. This could have been about 8. There's a lot of kind of interesting sort of themes and messages in this that are really important, I think, for teenagers, and it feels like it sort of has a very sort of realistic kind of conclusion. The only real major thing I didn't like about it is it kind of sends a bad message that it's okay to commit suicide as long as you have a good reason to do it. And that's not a good message to send to teenagers at all. Suicide is still, something that is definitively your decision whether or not, you think your life, however much people might have affected you to convince you that you should do it, indirectly or not. It's still your decision. Apparently they are making a second season. Cannot for the life of me understand why they would be doing that. What you could possibly do with this story now. I'll give them a benefit of the doubt on that, although I'm not massively optimistic that the second season is going to be worth watching. To be honest, I was surprised Stranger Things did a second season. That very much felt like it was going to be a one-off thing to me. But I am glad they did. So, I don't know, maybe this series will surprise me with its second season as well. Who knows? And finally, I basically only checked this out because I thought it was basically going to be How to Train Your Dragon, but with trolls, just because the animation style reminded me of that, and it really isn't. It's very much its own thing. It just did not grab me at all. I think I watched about 5 episodes and I'm like waiting for it to get going, waiting for something kind of interesting to happen, and it just wasn't happening. It's just like, just a kind of typical sort of coming of age kind of arc that, were it a film, they were telling this over a shorter period of time, probably be quite interesting, but telling it over the course of an entire series it's taking too long for things to develop to me, and certainly something that should have been a film, I feel. I only watched about 5 episodes of it, and it's like too slow, I feel. But I don't know, a lot of kids might find it more interesting. I believe it has got a second season now, so it obviously has found an audience. So yeah, that's it, guys. There's just some basic thoughts on some of the shows that I have watched on Netflix up to this point. Okay, see you later, guys. Ta-ra!